Good day everyone, my name is phoenixEye and today we find ourselves in Archetype Pilgrimage Part 1 Episode 2. We are going to see if we can make a bit of a proper deck for the Blue Eyes archetype. Now last episode I looked at all of the different Blue Eyes cards and I kind of picked out which cards I'd consider good and which cards I kind of considered essential for the deck. And this time we're just going to see, I'm going to start off trying to build something myself, just put together a little bit of a base deck, and then I'm going to look online to see what kind of combos are out there, what kind of good deck choices or what kind of synergy there is with Blue Eyes, and see if we can make this into a deck that can actually be playable in today's age. And of course in the next episode we're going to test the deck, maybe make a few small changes if things really seem to be not working out, but mostly testing out the deck. So let's start off by just throwing in all of the Blue Eyes essentials. Of course the Blue Eyes White Dragon himself. We also put in 3 Blue Eyes alternative because it seems pretty powerful. Now we also put in some Dragon Spirit of White. I'm going to have to see at what quantities I'm going to run this card at. But it's mainly here because it's treated as a Blue Eyes monster. Next up, White Stone of Ancients seems like a really good playmaker. I think I'm also going to put in White Stone of Legend. It's less flexible than White Stone of Ancients if I'm not mistaken, but it looks like it's still going to be good. And I mean, it's of course going to require some experimentation, because if it turns out to suck, then we're just going to send it off. Next up, I feel like the best of the With Eyes of Blue cards is probably Protector. I would also really love to experiment with Maiden with Eyes of Blue, but I don't know how consistently I'll be able to get her effect off. So I'm just in this experimental deck, I'm going to just see how often I'll be able to pull it off. So I'll just put in 3 copies for now. If it turns out that whenever I draw it I won't be able to actually use the effect, then I'm just going to... I'm maybe going to run one, but we'll just have to see. Now I'm going to put Priestess with Eyes of Blue in a bit of the... I'm going to call this the bench. Because if Maiden with Eyes of Blue's effect is going to be used a lot, then I'll probably also be able to resolve Priestess with Eyes of Blue's effect, because it kind of has similar conditions where it has to be targeted by card effect. So I'm just going to put it on the sidelines here. If it turns out that Maiden with Eyes of Blue really puts out some work, then I'm also going to see if Priestess might be able to put in some. Now I'm also going to put Master on the bench. I am planning on running the field spell for the Eyes of Blue cards, and if I'll be able to consistently get it on the field, then this card is probably also going to be pretty good, because I'll just be able to search out, or at least add from the graveyard to my hand, one of the With Eyes of Blue cards, and then directly normal summon it, which sounds like good versatility. Now next to him will be Sage with Eyes of Blue. It's kind of the same thing, but from the deck instead of the graveyard, so I'll be more likely to run him. But again, it purely depends on how much we're going to be able to use the field spell. Now then we're of course going to run Mausoleum of White, since I do like the Eyes of Blue cards. So I really want to try to see how much use I can get out of them. I've heard that they might not be the best bit of support, so it would be best to just run a few of them purely to make the synchros. But I still want to see if I can put a bit of a focus on them, and if I can play a lot with the Eyes of Blue cards, this card is going to put in a lot of work once I get it out. Now I'm just straight up going to run 3 Bingo Machine Go cards. It's an extremely easy searcher. So yeah, that seems kind of like an easy choice. Now I'm also going to put in Melody of Awakening Dragons, because, you know, it searches out 2 Blue Eyes. That's going to be quite useful. I'm also going to run Silver Scry, Of course I'm going to look at all of the amount of cards I'm going to run. I think this one is probably fine at 3, but there's a lot of cards that I should put in a bit less. But we're all going to find that out during testing. I mostly just want to figure out how good these cards are first. Now we're also going to run Foolish Burial, since we have the stones as a target. Seems like a really easy choice to me. I'm also going to put in Terraforming, because I do really want to experiment with this spell, so why not add in a bit of a search for it. I think I'm also going to put in Blue Eyes Solid Dragon, because we kind of have a lack of Blue Eyes cards. I'm gonna have to look at the list in a bit real quick again to see if there might be some more Blue Eyes, but I don't want to have too few cards with the name Blue Eyes in my deck. We're also going to try and run one Malefic Blue Eyes White Dragon, since we are running a field spell. Not sure if I'm going to keep this in, but I would at least like to experiment with how viable it is. Now one thing I want to look at, since all of the eyes with blue cards are spellcasters, I want to see if there might be something I can play to help them. So after a bit of research I found 3 generic spellcaster support cards that might be able to work in this deck. We have Magician's Restage, which more or less is a literal monster reborn. On that note, let's just... We can always add a monster reborn in here. If anything, we can just replace one Silver Scribe with monster reborn, since it's just a more versatile version of it. But anywho, this is essentially a monster reborn specifically for low level spellcasters, so that would work. It also has a second search effect, but that's not really what we're here for. Then I found this Dragon Revival Rhapsody. The usefulness of this card is purely dependent by how many Blue Eyes monsters end up in my graveyard, because essentially if I control a spellcaster, then I can use this card to monster reborn 2 dragon monsters, including 1 normal. Now this sounds pretty good, and that would lead like into instant synchro if I can get any of the eyes with blue cards on the field. So this is definitely a card to keep in mind. I'll keep it on the sidelines. It's just a matter of testing, seeing how many cards I can get into the graveyard. Then we have this Guidance of Spell Salvation. It's essentially just monster reborn except you add it to your hand. So warrior returning alive. But the reason why I considered running this is if we manage to like get out the field spell or something, or just get one of the eyes with blue cards in the graveyard, this still allows us to normal summon it, getting off, for instance, the effect of Protector, which would be nice. So that's definitely one of the decks I was considering. Now the next thing I'm going to do is look at some generic dragon support, and there's a lot of good stuff out there, so we're probably going to end up cutting a good bit of the cards in here in place for some good generic dragon support. So let me just dive online real quick and see what I can find. Okay, well, I must say I'm a lot more impressed with the generic dragon support in comparison to the generic spellcaster support. So let's just look at what we've got sitting on the bench here. First of all, we have Dragon Shrine. Now this card is essentially just a dragon specific Foolish Burial. Yeah, and that just works really well for this deck, because both the dragons being in the graveyard is useful, and we also just have the stones that we really want in the graveyard, and those are both the dragons, so this essentially just becomes a searcher. And also it has the potential of sending 2, so yeah, this is definitely a must in this deck. Then I found this Ruins of the Divine Dragon Lords. Yeah, this is mostly just an interesting sort of a lock thing. I'm not sure if I'll run this, but if I understand it correctly, it's just an interesting way to lock your opponent out of doing stuff. Next we have Dragon Ravine that I came across. This is also essentially just another Foolish Burial for specifically dragons. And I believe this one does not have a heart once per turn, so this one can safely be run multiple times. The only thing is that it's a field spell, which on one side does make Malefic Blue Eyes a bit more consistent, and also gives more purpose to terraforming. But we have to be careful that we don't destroy Mausoleum with it, but I think that should be fine. This seems like too much power to really pass up. Let's see, next I came across cards of consonants. Now I don't think I'm going to run this, but I did think this is just an interesting... Like, if you can get the full use out of this card, it's completely broken, because you can of course send one of the stones from your hand to the grave, getting off all of their effects, and then also draw 2 cards. But I don't think there are going to be a lot of times. Like, it's always risky to play a card that is completely dependent on another card. It's just going to be a brick way too often, so I think I'll stay away from this. And then I came across Return of the Dragon Lords. Now this one actually sounded like just a less limited version of Silver Scry, essentially. Just like a clearly... Like this card seems pretty made for Blue Eyes. As just a monster reborn, essentially. And it just has less limitations than... because I believe Silver Scry does have a heart once per turn, but... If I remember, yeah, this card both does not have a heart once per turn, and it also has a effect from the graveyard, just a negation, which, I mean, that seems really nice. I mean, it's a relatively situational negation, but I think this is just overall better than Silver Scry. So what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to put going to put Silver Scry on the bench, and then we're just going to run Return of the Dragon Lords. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is look at the extra deck, what kind of cards we're going to put in there. Of course we're going to start off by putting in the Synchros. These are some really good utility cards. Yeah, it's just kind of what the deck is initially based around, like especially Azure Eyes just gives your field some good protection, and Blue Eye Spirit Dragon mostly for that tag out, and also just a bit of limitation and negate. It's these cards are actually pretty good, so I think yeah, these are definitely a solid option to run. Okay. I put together a bit of an extra deck. I decided to run 2 of each of the Synchros. Might reduce the amount by a little bit later on, because I'm not sure if I will be summoning these multiple times per turn, especially Spirit Dragon. I really see a real reason to summon them multiple times, but I'll just see if it's even a good option. Black Rose Moonlight Dragon, put this card in here since it has an unsummon effect, and also it's summonable via Blue Eye Spirit Dragon, so that's a nifty bit of synergy. Yeah, so essentially this card can be, if you tag into this card, it's just you can target one of your opponent's special summon monsters and shuffle them back into the hand, so that's nice. Then Stardust actually helped me out. Stardust Yu-Gi-Oh! He helped me out with picking out some good rank monsters. So mainly these are just big boys with scary effects, but the main playmaker is probably going to be this guy. Essentially what he is capable of is, if I summon this dude just by having any 2 level 8s on the field, is going to be pretty easy. He can more or less for free summon any of these others directly to the field with one. Yeah, Yeah, and beyond that, these are just some big cards with good effects. Mainly just add versatility. And in the case I ever get enough monsters on the field, I decided to, you know, why not put an Appaloosa on here. I'll see how often I can make this, but if I can make this like once every 3 games, I think it's going to be worth it. Then just the generic nightmares, because versatility essentially. Bit of an ip. Again, versatility, just getting those nightmares out during my opponent's turn. That's going to add more, just only more value to them. Also, this guy over here, it just works well in dragon decks. Having 2 dragons on the field is not going to be difficult, and yeah, it seems like a pretty obvious choice. Beyond that, I made a little bit of a change to the main deck. I decided to, for now, turn both Dragon Shrine and Dragon Ravine to 3. Took out Monster Reborn and it wasn't going to do very much. Reduce the amount of stones, because I don't really want to see them in my hand. I mainly just want to discard them directly to the graveyard with off discard cards. So yeah, this is what we're going to experiment with now. Let's just see how much of a field we can make. Okay, like it might just be the Iropro's shuffling, but I feel like the Eyes of Blue are not really paying off. Like, I really like the moments that it does work, but usually it doesn't really do too much. I almost never managed to see Mussolini, which is a real shame. Okay, 2 cards I'm considering to put in are Ancient Rules, which would allow me to summon both blue, just a regular Blue Eyes, and Spirit of White. Just from the hand, which is nice, and Trade-in could give me maybe that extra bit of draw power that I need, but I would have to see what I would want to get rid of. Return of Dragon Lords is really paying off for me, I'm noticing that. Bingo Machine is just a good card whenever it's in the hand. Solid Dragon is just kind of here for the show, honestly. I'm noticing that don't really need that guy. And Malefic, I get to play it more often than that you'd expect. I always feel like scrapping Mausoleum entirely. Oh, it would be such a shame. Let me try something. There are going to be some weird ratios, but... Okay, I tried to look online, but I couldn't really find any pure blue eyes combos that would really hold up in a modern game, so I guess they're just confirmed not that good. But oh well, I think that what I built can at least pretty consistently put out a big scary monster, so that's nice. Next episode is mainly going to be me testing this deck against randoms online. If you really want to play against me, just for now leave a comment. If there's a lot of people looking for it, I might make a Discord just specifically for the archetype pilgrimage final duels. I might still change the deck up a bit between episodes or at the start of the next episode. It's imperfect as it is, I assume, so I'm here to learn. If you know any sort of big tech, make sure to tell me, just leave a comment. So yeah, if you want to catch the next episode, make sure to subscribe, and then I'll hope to see you next time. Have a nice day.